Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice to start a bachelor's degree since tuition is one-third the cost of four-year schools. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever. Whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. We talk about it with cute phrases like, no one likes a bone but a dog, or my jelly roll is sexy, or I like my woman with curves. But obesity is not cute. It causes all kinds of health issues that shorten your lifespan. But being obese may not all be all your fault. Up next on Another View, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby with real talk about our health and our weight. Plus, analysis of the confirmation hearing of Judge Katanji Brown Jackson and a tribute to fallen journalist Sierra Jenkins. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Special thanks to Lisa Godley and Todd Washburn and Barry Graham and the rest of the crew who held things down while I was away last week. Obesity is an epidemic in this country, and we'll talk about cause and effect with cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. But we begin today's broadcast with the awful effects of another epidemic, gun violence. Last Saturday, gunfire erupted outside an establishment in downtown Norfolk. 5 people were shot and 2 were killed. 25-year-old Devon Harris of Portsmouth and 25-year-old Sierra Jenkins of Virginia Beach. Sierra was a journalist with the Virginian Pilot and the Daily Press. Our Lisa Godley looks at Sierra's life through the eyes of her parents, Maurice Jenkins and Monica Thompson.
Sierra was just absolutely fearless with anything that she did. If she had the desire to do something, she was going to do it. She wasn't going to hold back, and she was going to put forth her all.
Her father, Maurice Jenkins, shares one of his favorite memories.
She would be in these talent shows, and she would sing. I remember the one time it was at Military Circle Mall, and she was getting ready to get up there. I'm a nervous wreck because my baby's going to get up there and sing in front of a whole mall of people, and I'm like, don't let this, go bad. Because as a parent, you don't want to see, your child be embarrassed or anything else. And she was unfazed, and she went up there and she just absolutely killed it. And that's just a story that I have of just her example of being fearless and not scared of anything.
A native of Norfolk, Sierra Jenkins graduated from Granby High School in 2015 and went on to graduate from Georgia State University. She also interned at Atlanta Magazine and CNN. She covered breaking news for the Virginian Pilot and Daily Press for 2 years and recently switched to the role of education reporter.
She always liked to write, and she always loved to read. So I'm assuming that's what drove her to move into that realm.
Her mother, Monica Thompson, described Sierra's devotion to those around her this way.
That one friend that you can count on.
She says her daughter was also a great teacher.
She taught me so many things. As a parent, sometimes you sit down and you think about, well, how in the world are my children teaching me things? One time, she just came in the house with an attitude, and everybody just needed to be aware that she had an attitude. And she must have said something to me, and I was just like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing today? And she would always come back and say, you know what, Mom, I'm sorry. I was in a different space, and I appreciate you not, jumping down my throat because I was rude. But she taught me how to say I'm sorry, something simple as I'm sorry. It wasn't until I was a whole adult that I knew how to tell people that I'm sorry when I realized that I'm wrong. And I learned that from my daughter.
Sierra's parents say they're glad to hear that police are stepping up their presence in that area, but they'd like to see that become the new normal and not just a temporary thing.
Sierra's not the first person to fall victim to this type of violence. These establishments have a responsibility. You want me to come in here and spend my money? I want to feel safe. It didn't used to be this way. I've always said Virginia Beach, Norfolk, all of these different cities has the potential to be somewhere great, a place that people will come and dine and even vacation. But no one's coming here for this. Do better.
And I'd also like to thank all the people that have honored her, offered their condolences, been there through some of the memorials and the vigils and the stuff like that. But one of her good friends spoke at the vigil about we need to finish the things that she was starting. So she was all the way about stopping stuff like this from happening, being a part of change and acknowledging what's not right and standing up. You know, when there's stuff going on, get out there and support it. That's what she would do. She would be there to support any good cause. So everybody's got stuff going on in life, but make the time to get out there and be a part of something that you care about.
While the time Sierra Jenkins spent working at her hometown newspaper was not long, the stories she covered, the lives she touched, and her impact on this community will not be forgotten. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And family and friends will celebrate the life of Sierra Jenkins at a wake on April 1st from 2 until 6 p.m. at Metropolitan Funeral Home on Granby Street in Norfolk. Her funeral service will be held on April 2nd at 11 a.m. also at Metropolitan. And we here at Another View extend our sincere condolences to both her family and also the family of Devin Harris. And now on to our discussion for today. Just about half of all Americans, all African Americans, are obese. Let that sink in for a minute. Is it cultural, poor eating habits, disparities in accessing healthy food, lack of self-discipline? It's time for Another View on Health, and our favorite cardiologist, Dr. Keith Newby, is here. Hello, Keith. How are you?
All right, and yourself?
I'm doing good. You know, I'm stepping lightly on this topic.
Listen, I think we all have to step a little lightly, especially in this COVID environment. I think we've all had to. We can all share in some misery as it relates to this topic, but that's why we're talking about it.
Absolutely, because we keep it real here on Another View. That's for sure. So, I want to clarify something first so that people understand. What exactly is obesity, and how is it different from being overweight? Or are they the same?
No, actually not. There's the body mass index is kind of a one factor we use that helps define that. So I think if my remembrance is BMI, normal BMI, I think is 25 or less, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So between 25 and 29, like 0.9 is considered overweight, and if you're over 30, then that's considered obese. Okay. Now, one of the things that I always have to deal with, as people will say to me, all that things that. Oh man, listen, I don't feel like laughing today, but I do get that a bit, and I think that the dose of reality. Now, let me say this to some of those people's defense. People like you talk about bodybuilders, people that have a lot of muscle mass. Their mm-hmm. BMI may be larger, or that a higher number than most other people, not because of their weight from a weight fat standpoint, but weight muscle mass standpoint. Okay. So then you want to look at central obesity or body or the abdominal circumference. So you have to take a measurement of that. So there are a couple of different ways they need to find this. The biggest issue I have to run into is people who don't want to seem to be cognizant of the realities that they are overweight or obese. It's kind of like we try to brush it off, and that's why the health epidemic is around. I mean, we talk about a pandemic with COVID-19. Obesity is a major problem in this country. Let's say 42% of people in this country are obese. 42%.
Yeah, 42% of everyone, and then it's even higher for African Americans. And African American women have the highest rates of obesity or being overweight than anyone else. 4 out of 5 Black women are overweight or obese.
And that is an issue. And I've run into this problem on such a regular basis of people understanding, and you try to explain to people, so listen, our job as health providers is to help you live your best life. Mm-hmm. So I need you to come off of this idea that there's not a problem here. And if I hear one more, morbidly obese person telling me they don't hardly eat anything, I'm tired of hearing that. I'm like, You can't. I said, not eating, or I should say, being that level of obesity and saying you don't eat is like me saying, you get pregnant without having sex. I only heard of that happening one time. That was about 2,000 years ago, and I haven't heard about that happening since. So I'm trying to get people out of this mindset of that particular aspect.
But so in your studies, working on another degree in public health, you did a paper recently that also talked about some outside factors that may contribute to obesity, particularly in Black and Brown communities, that have nothing to do really with how much you eat. I mean, in other words, it may not be all your fault. Is that right?
Yeah, that's to a large degree. That's true. Did you get a chance to read it?
Yes, I did.
What did you think?
I thought it was an excellent paper, actually.
So to the listening audience, I told Barbara I'm doing a public health degree at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So I've been out of the true school aspect for 30 years. I won't tell my age, but you can imagine. So going back to school and sitting in, even though it's a virtual classroom, just sitting in class having to write papers, I haven't done that in a while. So I had to reach out to my sister, who is the dean of liberal arts at Norfolk State. Said, read this paper, make sure I'm on track. Anyway,
it's lovely to have that kind of support.
I tell you. So I was waiting to see if she was going to mark it all up, but she actually didn't have to mark it up that much. So, but anyway, getting back to the point at hand. So the whole premise of that paper was how does structural racism impact obesity in the United States,
right?
And how are things viewed in terms of what may be happening to certain groups that may be different from other groups. So the view was, if you look historically, you'll find that when you go to any predominantly African-American or Latino neighborhoods, look at the surrounding areas, meaning the types of stores that are there, what type of restaurants are there, and you will find characteristically very little in terms of healthy fruit, vegetable type options. You'll see more like convenience store places. You'll see more fast food places. Very little in terms of more healthy options. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like it's designed to target. Look at a lot of these fast food commercials. Who are they targeting? When you see it, you see who they have up there. You know, I don't want to necessarily say any names, but you can imagine. You know, when you look at those commercials, they target certain audiences, and it's kind of interesting that the government has actually been relatively complicit in all this because, again, lobby groups. You know, you look at the amount of money, you know, that's made in this food industry. I mean, you talk about billions of dollars being made every year. So when so they have a lot of lobbyist money that they can use. So when they hit the government up and say, "Don't change anything," so then they don't change anything.
You hit in your paper the contrast between the amount of money that was used for marketing for these fast food type establishments, as well as to children with the high sugar content sodas, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And compared to the amount of money provided by the federal government for marketing of their healthy food program.
It was such a striking contrast. I mean, you know, you really think about that. It's just absolutely insane. $2 million the government spent on marketing for that healthy eating program versus what is like $780 million. I think McDonald's did like $1.3 billion. I mean, you know, when you talk about the amount of what you're spending, and so you can imagine what your intake is. You know, if you're spending a ton of money on advertisements, and they do, and again, the target audience is the problem. So I you know, even though I do kind of joke, I mean, I joke when we get on this show about beating some patients up, and I do have to do that some because you have to get people in a different mindset. But it's when you're exposed to this kind of stuff every day, and you think about, you know, parents who are have single moms who are having, they got to just get the kids something to eat because they're trying to make sure they get them home because they're working. And you go to some fast food joint because the kids want it, and you just say, well, I don't feel like cooking tonight because I got all this stuff going on, and you just get the quickest thing. But what is that doing to them long term? Yeah. And then when you talk about the cost of healthy food items versus unhealthy food items, then you get that striking contrast. So there's like a lot of things that really is not people's fault why this happens this way, and that's why you target it and you bring it to light, and you hope you can institute change.
So, Keith, paint a picture for us. What happens to your body when you are carrying this kind of excess weight? I mean, can you mentally help us understand what's going on?
So think about, if you talk about that body mass index thing, and I know a lot of people really don't want to roll with that, but the bottom line is it has legitimacy to it. Think about people who are thinner versus people who are a little bit heavier, and what the first thing is impact on your joints, your bones. So when you talk about arthritic problems, think about when people are overweight and obese and overweight, and they go to a orthopedic because they're having knee trouble, hip trouble, and the orthopedic surgeon is saying, I want to operate on you till you lose 100 pounds. They're saying that because when you talk about the amount of weight that goes on this joint. So you put a new joint in a knee or in a hip and you stand up, that impact of that weight on those joints is a lot, So you talk about just on an arthritic standpoint, when you're trying to move from point A to point B, and say you're supposed to be 150 pounds, yet you're 300 pounds. So that's double the weight you're supposed to be. So that's double the impact on those joints. So you have the arthritic aspect. Then let's look at the other stuff that happens. When you have, typically if you're overweight and obese, the potential for blood sugar abnormalities and hypertension start to go up. So you start looking at diabetes, hypertension, and how that impacts, your body, because then it's almost like a vicious cycle. You get overweight, especially with central obesity, and that forms into this thing called metabolic syndrome, where you start having this conglomerate of other medical problems that start to come about. The central obesity leads to the diabetes development because over these extra fat cells cause trouble with insulin production and how the body responds to insulin. So in other words, you may be making a ton of insulin, but your body doesn't respond to it because those fat cells are obstructing how insulin works. So then your pancreas says, okay, I need to make more insulin because my blood sugar is too high. So it starts to churn out more and more insulin. So then it's another triple effect, because then that high insulin levels then starts to create these oxygen-free radicals, which starts tearing up arteries. So then you start developing heart disease, stroke, heart attack, kidney problems. So then you have that issue on top of it. So then the blood pressures rise because of the atherosclerotic plaque forming, which is another confounding factor that also impacts a person's life. So then also you talk about shortening your lifespan simply because of a preventable problem. And that's where the issue comes in. Then look at the amount of money that's spent in the healthcare industry as a result of obesity. We're talking like billions of dollars. I think it was like I know I didn't have more up-to-date numbers, but I know they say the last one I saw back in 2008, they say they spent direct and indirect costs were $147 billion.
Yeah.
So you're looking at that. So and then they're talking about as we continue down this path, then all of a sudden they're talking about adding an extra 48 to 66 billion per year by 2030.
It's a lot. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What questions do you have for Dr. Newby about your weight, about being obese or overweight, and what we need to do about it? David joins us from Norfolk. Hi, David. You're on the air. Can you turn your radio down, David, please?
Emily.
Hi.
It's off.
Okay.
Question for Dr. Newby. By the way, my primary care physician, this is me. She is excellent. My question is it true that fat is an active substance, secretes things in the body that can produce heart attacks, strokes, etc.?
Barbara,
okay, you couldn't have trouble understanding what he said. The question is is it true that fat is the major substance that causes heart issues?
Okay.
David, your phone was breaking up. Thanks for the call, though. Okay,
I would say I don't know if I could say it's the main thing, but it's a big contributor because of what we had talked about earlier. So it's like a trigger effect. The obesity causes A, which causes B, which causes C, which causes D, and then that leads to the heart problem. So it's not so much a direct cause, but a very much an indirect cause. So it just leads to this other part, which leads to heart disease. So the fat cells itself is not so much a direct cause, but just more of an indirect cause. But there is definitely a cause and effect phenomenon with that.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. Give us your story. How have you been struggling with or maintaining? Maybe you're not struggling. Maybe you found the secret answer to keeping your weight under control. We'd love to hear from you. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Keith, let's talk about culture. Because, in the Black community, we do use those catchphrases. We do say, nobody wants a bone but a dog. And we do say, my jelly roll is cute or I'm fat, PHAT, while I'm not not about at all any fat shaming, at the same time, are we too quick to embrace it? Rather than work hard to get rid of it? Or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of issues. There's societal issues, that are predominant. And I tell you what I feel the most empathy for is women. And I'll tell you why. Because you guys get body shame. It's like if you're too thin, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're too big, that's a problem. If you're in between, they'll find a way to make it a problem. It's kind of like the way society has driven things is how women look impact how they are received. And it shouldn't have anything to do with that. It should be that person inside and the things that are relevant. But unfortunately, so, you look at, now everybody's getting surgical stuff done to themselves to make themselves different, and I really hate to see that piece going on because all that's really doing is saying that you're not satisfied with yourself. You're changing yourself for the wrong reasons, and that's the part that I find is women, I think, are just under so much pressure to look a certain way. So I think part of that embrace becomes that. Then sometimes it's just that avoidance of the issue. This is happening to you, and you just try to find a way to just justify that it's going on that way. But then again, when you think about these other influences, if your surrounding neighborhoods or how you were raised, or just so much that you have this pushing you down an unhealthy path, then you have to deal with that as well. So there's so many factors I think that's involved with this. And that's why sometimes I get a little frustrated with the government system because they're fostering that which is killing people.
Yeah. So what do we do about it? How do we start that process? Because, yelling at somebody and saying, stop eating, first of all, it's more than eating. It's also exercising, right? And I'm talking to myself.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is you have to kind of say to yourself, I have a problem. So you have to kind of look at yourself and say, okay, I'm running into an issue here, and this is my problem. Don't look at it like, but I want people to think about this differently. Don't look at it like it's a look thing. Look at it like it's a health thing, because I don't want to. I really do not want people to get the kind of idea that what we're looking at is that is how you look. Gotcha. But I want people to know how it's impacting their health. So the first thing is that piece, is understanding that there's a problem there that has to be addressed. Second thing is to understand why is there a problem. Is it because of your emotional state? I mean, because, especially a lot of people eat for comfort. It's not that they're, it's not so much even that they're hungry. I mean, some people, they're depressed. They have other issues going on, stressful lifestyle situations. There may be other factors involved that's driving people down the path. So it really shouldn't be, and again, even though I know, you and I would joke about stuff, and we're going to have fun when we do this together.
Right.
But the seriousness of it is that, we know that the mental health challenges are verbose and quite prevalent in this country, and how all that impacts on somebody's weight, it is a factor. So second thing is identifying why there's an issue. And then the third thing is, how do we change it? What do we need to do? What is it about the lifestyle that's driving it there? And that's where we have to really focus the attention on. The first two things are the background that leads to the third thing. How are we going to make that change? And I usually try to tell people that, try to get your families involved. Try to make it that it's not just you individually doing things, because I think families that do it together are more successful than if they try to do it individually. So that means that everybody needs to take a part, but they have to understand, why is it a problem? Avoidance is not going to make things go away. And that's where you run into a bigger issue, because people want to avoid it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to. It's like, well, if I avoid it, then therefore it will go away, but it won't go away. And I just hate to see when you run into the heart attack, stroke issues across the street, in the hospital, or the kidney failure problems because of the bad diabetes, or you see and you're dealing with people that get and I hate to see people in the motorized wheelchairs when they're already 300 pounds, because they need help. But the problem is, if you give them a tool in which is going to continue to foster their poor mobility, it's like, okay, so how is this going to help that person get better if we're going to give them something that makes them never have to walk again?
Yeah. If you're just joining us, it's Another View on Health with cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby, and we're talking about obesity. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Nicole joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Nicole. You're on the air.
Hey, Barbara. How are you?
Okay. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Thank you so much for this topic. So, Dr. Newby, my question is around all these different diets that are out here. Keto versus no carbs. Do we still stick under the 1,200 calories? Keto works, but it has to be complicating something else in our body. So tell me something about keto versus non-keto.
Well, that's a very interesting and insightful question. I've always been a big fan of the low carb type diets just because they do work. But you wonder the problem that you run into is lifestyle stuff. Like, how's it? Like, people will stay on it just to lose the weight, then they come off of it. At the end of that, then they go right back where they were before, in terms of weight class. But if you look at safety features or safety aspects of diets, interestingly, and I'll never forget this because back in the day, I've done I think it was the South Beach diet or Atkins diet, they called it back then. There was and dietitians would beat me up talking about how unsafe these diets were, and I was like, well, why do you say they're unsafe? And they came up with some stuff that I didn't believe. I'm like, well, I need to see some more data than just you telling me that. I need to see some factual information. So interestingly, a study came out, and I never forget this. This is probably back 2004, 2003, where they actually compared outcomes in patients who they did randomized trials where they had one group doing like a keto or low carb diet, and the other group was just low calorie diet, and they compared different aspects: amount of weight loss, what were their laboratory work, what was the safety, effectiveness, all that stuff. How much, they just had a myriad of different things they looked at. And it was kind of interesting in that the weight loss was identical between the two groups. The safety was identical between the two groups. But interestingly, the cholesterol levels in the low carb group was actually markedly better than the low calorie group. So which was contrary to most people's thought, because a lot of people who were doing Atkins or keto, or they're eating a bunch of meat. or
Right.
protein. So they kind of thought where this is going to be foods high in cholesterol, high in this, high in that. Therefore, my numbers are going to be bad. But they actually weren't because of that chemical profile, how is cholesterol made, which is in the liver. So obviously this change in their dietary eating habits actually promoted more of a better cholesterol profile than otherwise they saw. So I found that kind of interesting, that it worked out that way. So to answer the young lady's question, I think it was Nicole.
Nicole,
I would say this: safety-wise, you have to kind of go on what you think, what you feel, what tends to work best for you. And there's I think if you Google like best diets in America, typically U.S. News and World Report, they do this article every year where I think it's entitled like 35 best diets in America, something like that. And that's usually about the first, second, or third thing that'll pop up if you Google that.
Okay.
And they run this article every year where they compare, where they look at different diets and categorize them, like say most weight loss in this diet, or they have different categories that they have. And I tell people all the time, if you really want to try to search this out, because everybody can't follow the same diet. I mean, there's certain people that just what they crave or what they feel they need to be able to do, they can only do with certain types of diets, and other people may have different kind of cravings or whatever. So I always tell people, look that up and just look at those diets, because they usually give a synopsis of each one. I said that you see which one you feel comfortable with, and they'll categorize them out in terms of weight loss and with different things. And then you do your research on that one diet, and then you try to implement that diet. And that's what I tell people. Yeah, see if it works.
You know what, Keith? Our phone lines are lit up, and we have a shortened segment today because I got to get in some stuff about Dr. Katanji Brown Jackson also. But we still have a few minutes. Let me go to Kathy in Newport News. Hi, Kathy. You're on the air.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Your question?
Well, I just got my lab results back, and apparently I'm 75 points bad HDL level for my cholesterol. Now,
HDL or LDL? HDL or LDL? Because HDL is a good cholesterol. You want more of that.
Okay, the bad cholesterol was 75 points higher than it should be.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I have been exercising for the last 2 months, elliptical, upper body workouts, trying to diet, But one of my concerns is both of my parents suffered high cholesterol. My father, back in the 70s, was doing Jack LaLanne. My father was always fit and trim, never drank, smoked only for about maybe 15 years in his life, yet he had to have quadruple bypass surgery, and he had high cholesterol. My mother has high cholesterol. She's a tiny little lady. Am I just genetically predispositioned to having high cholesterol regardless of how I eat and how I take care of myself?
Yes and no. I think you do have a genetic predisposition based on historical aspects, but there are things you can do to change it. And you may want to look at something like that, South Beach or keto or something that's low carb, because I have found that a lot of people that do that will drop their cholesterol. The key thing for you that I would suggest is you may want to have your doctor run. And you could actually do this yourself. You can, if you have a smartphone, you can go on the Apple Store, or if you have an Android, whatever the store it is for that. I'm not familiar with that phone system, but look up like a 10-year cardiovascular risk assessment. And most of all those programs will have those that you can download on your phone, and that's going to ask you certain variables like your age, your weight, are you diabetic? If so, are you on medicine? What your cholesterol levels are? They want to know each of your cholesterol profile, and they're going to want your blood pressures. And it'll spit out a 10-year risk assessment of you based on your variables. And it'll say, and then what we're doing now is we use that to help us decipher who needs cholesterol medicine and who doesn't. So I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Kathy, for the call. You know what, Keith, let me ask you this, because we only got 4 minutes left in this segment, but talk about exercise also, because people focus so much on what they eat, but they also have to move.
Yeah, I think what you'll find, it was interesting, there was an article in Time magazine, this was years ago, called The Myth of Exercise. I'll never forget that. But it was talking about, people get frustrated because they exercise a ton, and then some of them even gain weight versus losing weight. Right. So what you find is that when you exercise, you get hungrier. So, it's a matter of, and that is true. You really think about it. So, and then people eat more. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you got to look at it from a global standpoint. It really needs to be both, your exercise and your diet in combination. And if you can do that, then you will see a change. Because the one thing about weight, now your metabolism may slow down and increase, but the bottom line is what goes in is what's going to go out eventually. But if you take it in and it ain't coming out, it's going to get stored as fat. So I tell people, I say it's still, it can be done, but you have to, you got to recognize if you're cheating. You got to recognize that you're cheating, and a lot of people won't do that. But the thing is, and I want to make sure that I caveat this, and I want to tell people, don't fuss at me for that last statement. Because I do understand that if your metabolism slows down for whatever reason, which is why you need to make sure you continue exercising, but if your metabolism slows down, you could eat less and still feel like you're not getting anywhere because your metabolism has slowed down to the point where you're not burning calories like you want to. Mm-hmm. So you have to combine. It's really better if you can combine both the exercise and the diet. But if you can do that, I guarantee you will see a difference, because I'm going to tell you, you think about it, how many third world country fat people do you know?
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't have anything to eat, the problem is what we eat is getting us in trouble.
Gotcha.
Just as much as how much we eat.
Okay, so in the last minute 30 that we have, give some encouragement to help people get started.
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is you recognize that there may be an issue that you have. Yeah. Secondly is, find out like how you can stay encouraged, because you don't want to ever look at it like, again, it's a personal attack. Look at it as like, I'm trying to live. So you want to get that piece in place. Third thing is, I would tell people, try your best to do this as a group. Find other people who may have a similar, be in the same boat you're in, that needs some extra encouragement, and do it as a group. If it's at work, get some of your coworkers, get some challenges at work. But you want to be encouraging. When I say that, I don't want people to like start getting to where they have too many competitions, and then you get frustrated because you're not winning, you're not getting anywhere. Yeah. And so that's not what I want. I want it as an encouragement to say we can do this as a unit. Get your family involved. If it's a church, get the church involved. Wherever it is you go, if you can find a way to have other people joining you, I think that encouraging moment can be life-changing for any individual.
Thank you so much, Dr. Newby. I promise you next month we will revisit this topic again, because clearly it is something that is of interest to everyone.
I look forward to it. Thank
Absolutely. You take care.
All right. You do the same.
All righty. And we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Claude McKnight of the group Take 6, and you're listening to Another View.
There's a new sun rising. I can see a new horizon. You keep me realizing you're the biggest part of me.
And welcome back. President Biden nominated Judge Katanji Brown Jackson as his choice for the next Supreme Court justice. Her confirmation hearings were held this week. Joining me with firsthand analysis of the proceedings is Dr. Eric Claville, Director of the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University and interim executive assistant to the president of the university. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Barbara, so glad to be here. Glad to be with Jordan.
I am so jealous because you were actually in the room yesterday for the last day of Judge Brown Jackson's testimony. So my first question to you is, give me a sense of what the room felt like. I know what it felt like on TV, but I'm curious as to what it felt like right there in presence.
Yeah, Barbara. Again, I was very, very fortunate enough to be invited to be a part of the proceeding. I was able to take part in the early morning, view the questioning. right when the senators are walking into the building and, again, walking into the room, walking right behind them, being seated, and just filling the entire room. I mean, it wasn't like any other Senate hearing or committee hearing or House floor discussion or Senate discussion. I've been in those before. It was different. And it was different because I was looking literally at history in the making, being a part of it, being in the room. And to me, it was just an awe moment. Of course, being engaged in public policy, being a professor, being a lawyer, the whole nine, and then really understanding her journey. Because her journey is part of our journey. I mean, we can all, you can relate, I can relate.
Absolutely.
Our friends, we can all relate to her journey. So just being there, first of all, was just an awe experience. I was truly humbled and grateful, like I am with all opportunity that God blesses me with. It's just a great journey to be on.
So next week, we're going to delve very deeply into the hearings, into what happens, subsequently, and also look at the whole process. But I wanted to talk with you today just because it was so fresh in terms of what was going on. Overall, how do you think she did?
Oh, first of all, she did a phenomenal job. I mean, she was poised. She's well qualified. We all know that. That wasn't even a question. And, one of the things we'll talk about next week is this word qualified when it comes to African Americans, especially women, Black women, being promoted or being nominated for positions. But outside of that, this is her third time going before the Senate Judiciary Committee to be nominated and then confirmed to a federal judgeship. First as a district court judge, second as a appellate court judge, and we'll talk more about the differences in those two next week, and now the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. So she was well poised, but of course, anytime your integrity or character is attacked, anytime your family is attacked, anytime you are attacked unfairly and unjustly, it does something to anybody. I don't care. I don't care if you're Black, you're white. I don't care who you are. It does something to you. So, you felt the frustration. You saw it. People saw it on television. In the room, you could feel it. The back and forth between the senators, and of course, on the Hill, everybody's friends. But at the same time, you have individual interests, you have collective interests, you have party interests, and you have interests of special interests. So all that comes into play.
So pundits on the left characterize the questions of Republican senators like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and others as pandering to their base. Is that your opinion? Is that what you saw happening?
From my assessment, and again, this is my assessment as being a political and legal analyst, yes. I mean, that's exactly what was taking place. That also took place on the other side. So, again, it wasn't about the person. It wasn't about the person or the qualifications. That was definitely not in question because some Republicans voted to confirm her for the other two seats in which she was confirmed for. The issue was about coming up from midterm elections. This is 2022. Midterm elections are right around the corner. So this summer, it is being geared up. We saw what happened here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, some of the campaign slogans and campaign techniques that were used here, they're going to be used on a national level. We talked about it with critical race theory, education, taking schools back and things of that nature. We saw it play out in school board meetings. So you heard a lot of that. And again, we'll talk about this more next week, but, being asked the question, will your race play a part in your decision making? That question is only asked to Black or brown individuals, not anyone else. So, again, we heard a lot of that, and that came into play during this. But again, it wasn't because of her. This is because of what's taking place in the political fray.
It's so interesting to me because it seems that, take Lindsey Graham as an example, who has voted for her twice. And if listening to his questioning yesterday, it was as if he had never known anything about her or even, respected the fact that she had made it that far. So the politics seemed to play much more of a role than the actual, is this person qualified to be a Supreme Court justice?
Absolutely. But we also saw it play in the last several years when former President Trump nominated Judge Gorsuch, who actually had a smoother route to the court, other than Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, the two other associate justices. So we saw it play out very, in those instances as well. But we know that in politics, especially on the Hill, there's a lot of short memories, right? So people kind of forget about what happened in those two hearings. So in this case, some people may say, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But at the same time, on both sides, you see that they're doing their very best to get an individual to the position that they feel can make a true impact. So that's what's going on.
So that's what you mean by when you said that also on the Democratic side that they also were playing to their base?
Absolutely. And when I say playing to the base, again, when you talk, and then again, this is from my position as an analyst.
Right.
You have someone that's been, first of all, it's not like, the president woke up one day and said, I'm going to nominate this person. There is a thorough vetting that takes place. I mean, a thorough vetting that takes place. Behind the scenes, FBI investigates the whole nine until that person is, okay, this is the person that we want, or the person that we can get through. So the persons that are nominated usually checks the boxes of those who were in power at the time. During President Trump's tenure, they checked the box. Of course, through the judicial plan that was laid out by Mitch McConnell and others in think tanks, they checked the box and they got their people in. So now it's time for the Democrats to check the box. And of course, we can make campaign promises and things of that nature. And of course, just doing the right thing. When I talked about history, Barbara, 230 years, the Supreme Court has been in existence, our U.S. Supreme Court. There's not been one black woman appointed, nominated, not even nominated, forget appointed, not even part of
the process at all.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there was no discussion.
Yeah.
So to see her there and to see her parents there, I mean, that was a proud moment, for any parent, because you're looking at your daughter, you're looking at your son saying, it was all worth it, right? It was all worth it. So even me, I'm kind of getting chills now because, again, I talk about the parents because those were our parents, right? I think about Michelle Obama's parents. Those were our parents, blue-collar workers that, did the best they can, raised their kids the best they can, did the right thing, pushed, and that's what you see. So it was just a phenomenal moment. And I also got a chance to share it with some of my former students, their law students. Matter of fact, I'll feature one of them on my show here at Norfolk State on WNSB, which airs every Sunday live at 1 o'clock. But a law student, I teach constitutional law there, and here we'll have a student that they traveled. There was 50 students from Southern University Law Center and other students from National Organization of Black Law Students, which, of course, Judge Jackson is a part of. Yeah. And they all traveled to Capitol Hill, and their article was featured on ABC News, CNN, and we'll get their perspective. For the last several weeks, I've been doing a series on this hearing, this confirmation, the education of it. I've been fortunate to have African-American women law school deans, which there aren't many. So I've been fortunate to have them on the show, other black female law professors and the like. So it's been a great several weeks, and this week is going to be great too.
I was going to say it's not over yet. So Eric, in your opinion, will there be Republicans who will vote for her?
No.
None.
No.
Wow. So if Democrats were not in charge of the Senate, this would not go any further.
Correct.
Oh my, that's really disheartening, especially since they voted for her in the past.
Yeah, and I say no. You may get one of the two women U.S. senators, maybe two of them, right? You may get senator, of course, out of Alaska and Maine that may vote for them, but other than that, no, we don't really see it. And of course, if it doesn't happen, right, you'll have the first black female vice president of the United States confirming breaking the tie of the U.S. Senate for the first black female nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Talk about history.
Right. So, I mean, you're right. Talk about how things play out, how history plays out. I mean, those are scenarios that could come up. And, to be there for that would be also tremendous. So,
wow. So what would be the process if she didn't? So say something went completely wonky and she was not confirmed. Would they have to go back to the drawing board?
Yes.
So would that automatically include the other candidates that were mentioned prior to Judge Jackson being selected?
That would be the smart thing to do because you don't have to vet anyone else. You don't have to delay the process because keep in mind that as the confirmation hearing itself, and this is a great opportunity for the public to be educated about this process because it's a very thorough process and it's a great democratic process, which is why our democracy is to be fought for and cherished because of this process. But that would be the smart thing to do because you do have midterm elections coming up. And the more controversy you have, it actually puts a clamp on your ability as members to campaign and run for office, run for re-election or campaign for others. So you want to close this out as soon as possible. Keep in mind we got other things that we're dealing with on the national level, more specifically with the economy, inflation, all tied to what's happening overseas in Ukraine and Russia. So there are other things that we got to tend to in the public eye, public purview. So if that does happen, that would be the smart thing to do. However, I don't foresee that happening.
Okay, so we think that it will move forward. What about her announcement that she would recuse herself from the affirmative action case that could be that's coming before the Supreme Court with Harvard?
Yeah, it's again, this is an opportunity for individuals who are elected to kind of back individuals up into a wall and kind of put them on the spot. Because when you talk about judicial discretion, when you talk about the decisions that are made in chamber by judges, the process, if you're legally trained, you can read the decisions and kind of understand the judicial philosophy that individuals go through when actually writing the decision and coming to the actual judgment that they come to, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the holding, you have the disposition of the case itself. And then, and all of that is out of the public purview, right? You know nothing about that. But what now happens when you have issues that are political, you get individuals on the record to say, okay, they said that they were going to recuse themselves, but they didn't. Right. Look at them, and you can use that as a political football. So it's an opportunity for them to back individuals up into a wall. But at the same time, it may be the right thing to do, right? Because you were at the university, or you may have an interest in a company where you have to recuse yourself, or there may be a relative that is a part of the case that you have to recuse yourself. So it happens all the time.
So it does happen all the time, and that's not a big deal. Well, I am really looking forward to delving even more deeply into this entire process with you next week on our show, and I really appreciate you just kind of giving us some of the color of, pun intended, of the room and what was happening.
It was quite a bit.
Oh, gosh. That's Dr. Eric Claville. He is the head of the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University and interim executive assistant to the president. Eric, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
All righty. You take care. And before we say goodbye, a history lesson, courtesy of my friend and retired journalist with the Virginian Pilot, Mike Knepler. Today is the 56th anniversary of the lawsuit filed by Norfolk voting rights champion Evelyn T. Butts that resulted in the U.S. Supreme Court's 1966 ruling to ban poll taxes from state and local elections. Now, Mayor Kenneth Alexander wrote a book about all of this, about Evelyn Butts, and you can attend his talk. It's tonight at the Slover Library. It's happening at 5:30 p.m. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Thomas Nelson Community College, now becoming Virginia Peninsula Community College, the first choice, whether starting your bachelor's degree or advancing your career. More at tncc.edu.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.